This is SportSpace.
Is live. Our sorry to interrupt. Our teacher, Mr. Harper, has won an award. Welcome back to SportSpace. I'm your co-host, Simon Besnolly. Today I'm joined by my usual co-host, Ben Riches. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be back with y'all for another Friday of sports.
You know, it's been a kind of a crazy week. Hard to think about. The Super Bowl was not even a week ago.
Right.
Baseball is getting started. Basketball's in the swing of things. The Winter Olympics is going on in Milan. I think the United States is third in medals,
third in golds.
Right the U.S. men's hockey team picked up a 5-1 win over Latvia the other day. So, you know, good going for the United States over Milan. But we're gonna just break down the Super Bowl real quick, and then we're gonna move on to the NBA trade deadline. And Ben, that was a boring Super Bowl.
It was not the Super Bowl many people were expecting. If you come into this game looking at two teams, they're at the top of their respective conferences, really exciting offenses, a couple of dynamic defenses, and it just was a snooze fest at the end of the day. The Seahawks dominated all phases of this game, and you can see it's only a 16-point victory at the end of the day for the Seahawks, but outside of the fourth quarter, they didn't even allow a point, if I'm not mistaken.
That defense, Jake May kind of handles that Seattle defense. And that's kind of what we talked about leading up to that. Is that if either of these defenses can give one of the quarterbacks trouble, either Sam Darnold or Drake May, then that offense would struggle,
right.
and the other team would win.
That's exactly what happened.
And that's exactly what happened. You see with the Seahawks, Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl 60 MVP, just had a really great game. But honestly, that Super Bowl MVP should have just gone to the defense as a whole. Obviously, they can't give it out to a whole group, and Ken Walker was maybe the most deserving player. But that defense was spectacular. And, Drake May couldn't do anything. I think Drake May might have been injured, maybe something with a shoulder problem. But at the same time, that he just couldn't get it done. You could see that he started to rush. He started to go through his wouldn't go through his process and go through all those
Everything
reads,
certainly
and
didn't
he started
look as
rushing
clean
reads
as it had the whole season. And I think a big problem that a lot of people have touched on since that Super Bowl was how much their offensive line struggled. He sacked 6 times in the game, which is just it's way too much. I mean, you spent a first-round pick on Will Campbell in this past draft. They've built up this offensive line to try and protect Drake May, and it just didn't work out in this one. The Seahawks defense kept getting home.
I mean, this is Drake May is a quarterback where throughout the regular season, he was maybe the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. And
right.
I think his completion percentage was about at a 73% mark, which is pretty elite. And that clip dropped down 10 points to about 62, 63 range. And I mean, that's taking away a lot of production from an offense. I mean, you're losing. That's a lot of ball, and it's a lot of good Lord. We're off to a rough start here. I am personally. But just a rough outing for Drake May and the Patriots, and you could kind of just see the inexperience from the offense.
And you started to see the holes on the team as well. Some holes in the offensive line that hadn't necessarily come to light during the season. And we talked about during the year, the Patriots played that fourth place schedule. They played, the worst schedule in the NFL in terms of record. And you started to see some of those holes show their ugly faces against the Seahawks. That includes the receivers, where when Drake May's not putting the balls on these receivers perfectly, they might not always haul them in.
I mean, this is the receiver room was really only headlined by Stephon Diggs. You have Matt Collins in there. But, I mean, Keyshawn Boutte. But outside that, you don't really have any top-end talent where the Seahawks, Sam Darnold was throwing the ball to the offensive player of the year, and Jackson Smith had Jigba, and Cooper Kupp, who has played in Super Bowl before and won a Super Bowl before, and has been one of the best pass catchers in the NFL for the past 5-6 years. Yeah. And to kind of, it's very different weapons at each quarterback's disposal.
And you look at Drake May, and I think this is not necessarily the worst thing that could happen to Drake May in his career. Because now he's gotten a taste of what this is like, and he's so young that he can come back here, absolutely can come back here in the next few years. Mike Vrabel's not going anywhere. He's still going to be a great coach. A lot of this core is not going anywhere for the Patriots. Drake May still super young, and he's going to get a chance to keep fighting. And now he knows what it is to get to the peak of the mountain and fall off.
And
so now he can fight back up.
Both quarterbacks kind of both teams really are ahead of schedule.
Right.
I mean, you mean
Yeah, absolutely.
both of these teams are picking up pretty early in the first round last season, and all played. I think we're all finished near last of the division. I think maybe the Seahawks finished third last season. I don't know if I think the 49ers finished last, but still some of the worst teams in the National Football League last year. And both were in the Super Bowl this year. And if you had told the fans in August that, hey, you're going to be playing for a Super Bowl you're going to be playing for a Super Bowl come February,
really?
Then they wouldn't believe you.
Right.
And so, while this definitely stings for Patriots fans and the Patriots, you have to realize that you weren't supposed to get here this year, and that you're way ahead of schedule, and that you have a young quarterback that's not going anywhere. You have
still going to keep growing.
You almost won the MVP. You have one of the best coaches in the NFL.
Right.
And I mean, you have a very talented defense. So you got to continue building up that offense, continue to have Drake May develop. And then with the Seahawks, I mean,
yeah, they're ahead
what
of
more
schedule
do you
too.
want? They're way ahead of schedule.
People thought they were going to go into a rebuilding year. They thought Sam Darnold was their quarterback to get them between a bridge to get them between the end of the prime of Geno Smith to whoever their next guy would be. And they thought maybe that's Jalen Milroe, but we haven't seen that at all. And in the end, it's Sam Darnold who has a second career renaissance in a row and sends them all the way into a Super Bowl championship. So it's absolutely unexpected for Seattle if you go looking at what we were saying about them coming into this season.
And we'll see what kind of market value Sam Darnold gets this offseason.
Ridiculous.
But, I mean, I think if he stays with the Seahawks, they have a shot to go win back-to-back. I mean, that's incredibly difficult.
Getting Zach Charbonnet back.
We've seen
have JSN, Kenneth Walker on offense.
We've seen, obviously, teams struggle to win back-to-back. Obviously, the Chiefs did it pretty recently. But, I mean, the Eagles struggled this year. Mm-hmm. So, it's obviously a tall task. But, I mean, if Sam Darnold returns to the Seahawks, I think it's very possible.
Yeah.
But now we're moving on to the NBA, and we're in the midst of a pretty crazy NBA season right now. And the trade deadline wasn't as dramatic as many thought it would be,
right?
Especially for Ben's Milwaukee Bucks.
Which, yeah, I mean, there were so many rumors. It's every year. There were so many rumors around the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo, but he's said and he's remained steadfast that he's loyal to the team and he's not trying to leave right now. Of course, they're going to reevaluate going into next season. But even without the big name news, there were still some large headline trades this trade deadline that involves James Harden getting sent from LA to Cleveland and Anthony Davis from Dallas to Washington. Those are the two biggest trades.
Both pretty bizarre trades, I think.
Right.
The Wizards have put together a weirdly good roster that can, once healthy next year, maybe compete in the East. But it's a very weird roster composition. And then with James Harden to the Cavs, that's also, I feel like, a pretty weird trade. You're adding a very expensive aging guard that calls for a very big chunk of the ball share when you have Donovan Mitchell on the team. Darius Garland was not as expensive and also much younger. And you also gave up a second-round pick. I feel like it's a very interesting trade for the Cavs.
And for the Clippers, too, you're acquiring Darius Garland, who's at the low point of his career. He's still young, but he's already had this big trough in his career. And what is your goal now if you're the Clippers? Because you're trading your win-now piece in James Harden. You still have Kawhi.
Well, I think the Clippers are just done with winning now. I think they're looking ahead to past James Harden and past Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
But
they already wiped their hands clean of Paul George.
But wherever James Harden has gone, really, those franchises, those teams haven't had much success. No. When he was in Houston, they gave him everything that he wanted, and he was like, "I'm out. I'm going to Brooklyn." And then he teamed up with Kevin Durant and Kyrie, and people thought they were a shoo-in for a ring,
of course.
And they didn't even get close. Then he gets sent to the Clippers and teams up with Kawhi and Paul George. And they didn't even get close.
They didn't get anywhere close.
And so I think this is a really interesting trade. If it works out for the Cavs, I mean, it works out for the Cavs.
Right.
But I think it's just a weird fit.
I mean, Cavs
with where the team is right now, what you're trying to do. But I think just two very weird trades that headlined the week.
Right. I mean, the Cavs so far 3-0 with James Harden. They haven't lost a game yet. But they have played the Kings. They beat the Nuggets, which is a good win, and then they beat the Wizards, who are not trying to win yet. They're trying to still get a good draft pick this season, keep their acquisitions out until next year. But the Kings have a really interesting thing going. Now they've acquired Anthony Davis. They didn't have to send too much away for him. It was a package headlined by Chris Middleton, who's, past his prime for sure in his career. A couple young players were sent as well, and some draft capital. But the Wizards now have a core of Trae Young and Anthony Davis alongside Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly and Bub Carrington, all these young guys, and a top draft pick this year. So the Wizards are suddenly from absolutely nowhere into contention next season.
But I mean, that all remains on Trae Young and especially Anthony Davis staying healthy.
And Anthony Davis especially.
And I mean, but this is such a talented NBA draft class where you have Caleb Wilson, the UNC forward that recently news broke that he has a fracture in his left hand. He may be done for the year. He may not be. Cam Boozer down the road in Durham at Duke. And then also you go across the country, you have AJ DeBansa with BYU and Darren Peterson with Kansas. So there's some questions surrounding him. Maybe not being the best team player. It's still really
ridiculously talented.
Still really unknown. But Darren Peterson, it might be the most talented player in the draft. But even to go outside, you have Keaton Wagler, who's maybe a pretty polarizing prospect out of Illinois, freshman guard. And then, but there's so much talent in this draft class that I mean, if you're the Wizards, if you don't even, you could get the 4th overall pick, and you get one of the first 4 I mentioned out of Wilson, Peterson, DeBansa, and Boozer, and those 4 players in a pretty normal year would go 1st overall. And so, I don't know if they'll end up getting that high of a draft pick, but it's certainly interesting to see how this strategy will end up playing out for the Wizards.
Right. And another question is, I mean, they traded away like AJ Johnson in this deal, but he wasn't a big part of their future anyways. The question for me is, how well are these young players going to mesh together? Because they haven't done so well yet. But the question is, how well can they work together, and how well can they add this piece? And are they really going to be able to leverage the 2 timelines into success at either timeline? That was the problem when we were talking about the Warriors the past few seasons, is you had the Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond timeline, and the Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski timeline.
That's the timeline?
According to them, it was. And neither of them weren't able to work together because, Kuminga didn't become a star like they wanted him to. Curry's just getting older. He's still great. So the question for me, for the Wizards, is, are they going to be able to win while Anthony Davis is still in his prime and hopefully while he remains healthy?
And another pretty interesting trade, not a headline, but nothing major compared when you're looking at Anthony Davis to the Wizards and James Harden to the Cavs, is Jared McCain's the Thunder.
Right.
The Thunder obviously have a wealth of draft capital, and so they give a 2026 first and 3 seconds to the 76ers for Jared McCain. Jared McCain still has had his struggles, has had his injuries, but when he's healthy and when he's playing well, he's one of the best.
Last year,
he's such an awesome young scorer, and that's something that the OKC's maybe slipping a little bit right now. But they add electric scorer off the bench and Jared McCain, and I think it's just a very interesting trade. I mean, the Thunder have so much talent on their roster, so much talent on their roster, but Jared McCain can learn from some of the best guards in the NBA, or the best guard in the NBA. You could say Gilgeous-Alexander, and play on a contending team, and I think it's very interesting trade for the Thunder, interesting trade for the 76ers.
And it's a way to get a young player who still has a lot of upside for very little. It's not nothing, but very little
for how much draft capital the Thunder have.
And they're going to be so
little.
Good that I don't know if it's their pick, but and McCain, small sample size, only 4 games. He's already averaging over 9 points for OKC so far. Shea's been hurt, so he's had more playing time. But to have somebody like Jared McCain coming off your bench as a backup one is really another ace up the sleeve of Mark Daigneault and the Thunder.
And I mean, Jared McCain hasn't been great this year, but his freshman year, his rookie year, but his rookie season before he got hurt, he was rookie of the year.
Right, he was averaging over 15, 3 assists. He was shooting 38% from 3, but only played 23 games in that season.
And so
he hasn't looked the same since.
But if you can get him back to that form where he doesn't have to be up to that, he doesn't have to be up to that level with. He doesn't have to be up to that level with the Thunder. Right. He has SGA on his team. Tyrese Maxey's great.
He's just a role player.
But he can just be a role player,
right,
and develop and grow his game a little bit more.
He's not going to start. He shouldn't. If OKC's healthy, it's going to be Shea and Lou Dort in that backcourt. He's not going to start. So he's going to get a chance. His chances off the bench. He's going to have his moments, and he's not going to have as much pressure on him. Finally, The last major trade we're going to talk about here in the NBA. This was a couple days before the deadline, if I'm not mistaken, and it's the Grizzlies finally admitting that this core of Ja and Jaren and Desmond Bane did not work out for them. They already traded Desmond Bane. Jaren Jackson Jr. is now shipped off to Utah for Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 firsts. And honestly, I'm happy with this trade for both teams. For Utah, it's a little bit confusing, but Utah is also a directionless franchise right now. And so I think that finding a player like Jaren who's so grounded and so consistent will give them a little bit of an identity and let us see if Will Hardy's truly a good coach like we think he is, if giving him some talent. For the Grizzlies, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're getting draft capital, you're getting some young players. I guess we don't know what Taylor Hendricks is going to look like. And they're just clean. They're saying we're washing our hands, we're done with this core, we're moving on, we're rebuilding. Hopefully they'll be able to find something new, maybe find a suitor for John Morant over this offseason.
And I think it's the right call by the Grizzlies. I mean, you could see even a couple years ago that it was time to wipe the slate clean, and just start anew. But for the Jazz, they gave up a really good chunk. They gave up a lot of assets, and for again, kind of similar to the Wizards, weird roster construction where you have Lauri Markkanen, who's taking up a big amount of money. He's 28, so a bit younger than what like Anthony Davis would be, and around it's maybe a little bit younger than what Trae Young would be, around the same age as Trae Young. Actually, a little bit older than Trae Young. But he's not he's like on the border between being a really good player and a star.
Yeah, I think he's a star, but he's definitely nowhere close to being a superstar.
And then you have Jaren Jackson Jr., who's also getting paid $35 million. And he's maybe also kind of in that range where he's a really good player, but he's not necessarily a star.
And there's nothing to put those two over the top. This is where you need a third star.
But so you're looking at
the rest of their lineup is all young players. It's all Keontae George, Cody Williams, Ace Bailey. There's nowhere else to elevate these two good bigs.
And so you're kind of looking at, okay, it's pretty similar to the Wizards actually. It's two competing timelines, and if the Jazz can get these, can get Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. to take these young players, Ace Bailey, Kyle Filipowski, Keontae George, Walker Kessler, kind of I guess say take them under their wings, and if they can kind of combine those two timelines, I guess, then I could see this totally working. But my initial reaction when I saw the trade was I wasn't a big fan, because the
Grizzlies makes total sense.
Because if the Jazz, you're sitting at 18-38 right now, and in an extremely difficult West, and I mean you're going to be adding probably a pretty high draft pick to this. I mean you could be potentially adding H. Debanza to this roster. And just a very interesting trade. Still, I mean, I think a lot of these trades were okay. This could work. Let's see in 2 years if this does work.
And I think it's possible the Jazz will make some magic. It's possible. I don't expect it, but it's possible. And for their sake, I hope they start a new era with some new uniforms. Those are horrendous. Moving on, Alabama basketball currently shifting into the college level. Way into SEC play. We're in the middle of February. March is just around the corner. And Alabama is on a 3-game win streak right now, not able to get back into the top 25 despite that. But the big news for Alabama is the loss of a player who we just got back, a few weeks ago. Hard to count it as much of a loss. But officially the loss of Charles Bediako, who had come back, filed this injunction against the NCAA saying he had eligibility after playing in the NBA G League for multiple seasons. And, a Tuscaloosa judge ruled against him this week. So Bediako will not be with the Tide for the remainder of his career. Yeah,
I just think a very interesting, very, very interesting kind of saga.
Yeah.
Where,
so peculiar.
From my point of view, when I look at it from an Alabama's perspective, it's like, I don't really care if we win games, we win SEC tournament, SEC championship. If we, go back to the Final Four, go back to the Elite Eight, I don't really care. But as someone who loves college athletics, namely college basketball and college baseball, which we'll get to in a moment, you can't set that precedent of allowing players that are selected in the NBA draft or professional leagues to come back. Obviously, baseball's a bit of an exception,
Right.
but you can't forego your eligibility and then decide to come back. That's a precedent that couldn't be set.
Right.
And then, but I do think that the case that Charles Bediako and Nate Oates and Charles Bediako's lawyers put out was a very compelling case.
Yeah, they did well with what they had.
They drew comparisons to James Najee, the Baylor center, who was selected in the NBA draft. By the way, Charles Bediako was not selected in the NBA draft. He went undrafted. He signed a 2-way contract with the San Antonio Spurs and was waived before opening night of the NBA season. But that is technically an NBA contract, and he's never played an NBA game. But a 2-way is technically an NBA contract. Yeah. James Najee never was selected by the Charlotte Hornets in that same draft with the 31st overall pick. Then his draft rights were traded multiple times, I believe. And no, actually, I believe he was drafted by the Pistons, and his draft rights were traded to the Charlotte Hornets. But and then he decided he ended up not playing at all, and then he went back to the Euro League and was playing top flight basketball. And there's also comparisons to the international players that you see all throughout college basketball.
Yeah,
and just should he have been granted the injunction? No, but was for just because of the precedent that it was set for all of college sports.
And
but the case they had, if you weren't saying that precedent, the case they had was extremely good.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it completely contextless, Alabama probably wins the case. But from the perspective of the NCAA, from the perspective of college basketball and somebody who wants to look out for the well-being of college basketball, I do think this was the right decision, because it's such a dangerous, like you said, it's such a dangerous precedent to set that a player can leave college basketball, sign a professional contract, and then come back. And so I'm honestly, even though it sucks for Alabama basketball this season, I am glad this happened, because I'm worried, given what we've seen in college basketball, that whenever the ball starts rolling, it never stops. And it's nice to see some pushback on these big changes in college sports.
But moving on to on the court side for Alabama basketball, as we mentioned, 3-game win streak against Texas A&M, 3-point close wins in the first 2 games against Texas A&M at home, 197 win down to the wire. Then you go on the road to Auburn and Neville, 96-92 win, also down to the wire. And then you went to Ole Miss. I think it was their first game back in SPJ since the ice storms that hit Oxford earlier this month, or pretty recently.
Yeah.
But and that was
dominant,
close, very close in the first half. And that Chris Beard defense gave the Crimson Tide a lot of problems, but eventually pulled away, won by 19 points, 93-74, pretty handily. I think they had 5 guys score double digits. What stood out to me the last couple of games, that Latrell Wrightsell has been phenomenal. I mean, it's something that the Crimson Tide really missed early in the part of the year, where he was struggling from deep. He wasn't shooting. I mean, Latrell Wrightsell is almost a 40% 3-point shooter, and when he's healthy, and he was shooting 25% from 3. Then he got hurt. He missed it. I think he missed 1 game against Tennessee, and then he came in which the Crimson Tide lost. And then he came back, and he's been shooting almost 50%, or maybe he is shooting 50%. And he's been absolutely lights out. He tied his career high for 3-pointers made with 7 against Ole Miss, which he set not too long ago, I believe, against Missouri.
Yep.
And he's been key for the Crimson Tide, kind of pulling some of that pressure off of LeBaron File and Aiden Holloway.
That's why it's been so good to have him healthy, because he's dealt with so many injuries in his career. It's good, and he's not just a great player on the court, but of course a veteran voice as well. And Alabama's been needing that with a lot of young players.
And also, I mean, Wrightsell he's as Nate Oates would maybe, as Nate Oates calls for, he's a blue collar player.
Of course.
He's maybe not the best defender since his Achilles injury, which, I mean, to be blunt, no one on this Crimson Tide team is. This is a team that struggles, especially on the perimeter with defense. But he hustles, he plays his heart out, and it's something that the Crimson Tide really lack at times. And having him healthy and being able to play him when he's also being extremely proficient on the offensive side of the court allows the Crimson Tide to have that aspect of his game on, through getting loose good Lord, getting offensive rebounds and diving for loose balls and making hustle plays. Same thing with Houston Millett. When Houston Millet's hitting shots, he does the same thing as well. And but you can't play those guys if they're negative on offense. And so that's why
that's not how Alabama works.
That's not how Alabama works. And but the big, not big, but important game against South Carolina on Saturday, trying to keep this win streak alive, hold the 4 line in the NCAA tournament. And then you got a big one next week against Arkansas.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest game for the rest of this year. Alabama looking at the rest of this regular season slate. South Carolina, then Arkansas at home. That's that big game. The only ranked team remaining on the schedule is the 21st ranked Razorbacks. Then you go at LSU, home against Mississippi State. Then you face at Georgia or at Tennessee at Georgia, and then the
Tennessee may be ranked.
Basketball at home.
Tennessee may be ranked. But that's also a big game.
Maybe at some point, but they're not currently.
Are they not? I
don't believe they are. So
I thought that at the back. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really keep track of Tennessee because I don't want to. But
either way, a lot of big games in the rest of the year because the South Carolina's keeping on track, keeping this win streak going is big. Arkansas, that big ranked matchup. Of course, the Iron Bowl basketball is always huge, and then at Tennessee is never easy.
Yeah, I mean the Crimson Tide are looking to kind of get to. They're kind of out of the race for SEC regular season title, but they're looking to get their first SEC tournament title since 2023, and they're also looking to get back to the Sweet 16. That would become 4 straight, I believe, for NATO. And there's that probably I don't know if that has been done for an Alabama program history. Maybe it has, but certainly not. Especially if you get into the Elite Eight, obviously that's 3 straight Elite Eight.
First time.
So 4 straight.
It's never been done.
4 straight Sweet 16 appearances would be a program first, and then also 2 straight Elite Eight appearances is also a program first, and then 3 adds on to that. But this is the golden era of Alabama basketball.
Right, absolutely.
And this is maybe not the greatest team that Nate Oates has had during his time at Alabama. Obviously, that 2023 team was spectacular.
Right.
And last year's team was in that upper echelon of teams, but maybe it was like a tier 1B team.
Right, not a team that people thought was really going to win a championship, a team that could compete for it.
And it's maybe not the best team, but still an incredibly talented team, and a team that in past seasons, especially during our lifetime, you wouldn't have seen.
No.
And so I think while it definitely gets frustrating when Alabama has these losses like against Florida where you just get bullied in the paint and get dominated by bigs, is that we haven't had better. And I think I'm fully bought into Nate Oates and what he's doing with the Crimson Tide. I'm just not
going to get better.
I only bring this up because I've seen a lot of people, namely on Twitter, to be talking. You can say what you want about Twitter, but talking about Nate Oates and saying how his system is gimmicky and how we don't play defense when we get dominated by bigs. But
that's true. But we were also the national 1 seed 3 years ago
by running the same system.
With the same system. What's the point?
Every system has their weaknesses and their strengths.
Yeah, all of that is true, but none of those are reasons why we couldn't win a national championship with this system.
No, this system can totally win a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Florida runs a pretty similar system where in terms of fast-paced play, maybe not the same volume of 3-pointers, except they've just had some incredible bigs that are able to they've had Ruben Chinyelu and Thomas Hawk and Alex Condon last year who've just been phenomenal. But you can win with this fast-paced style of play.
Totally. Yeah.
But also
if you're hitting your shots
with this fast-paced style of play, this is the most success Alabama's had in men's basketball history.
Yep.
And then moving on to another program on campus that's not football, Alabama baseball is having their opening weekend. Actually, first pitch is in about 2 hours from now. They welcome Washington State from the now defunct, or not defunct, but now new look Pac-12. New look Pac-12. And Washington State not great last year, but you're still welcoming a big time, not a big time program, but you're a big program,
Division I program.
So still a big time program to Tuscaloosa, and the Crimson Tide finished to pick in the bottom quarter of the SEC, finished to pick 12, but finishing 12th in the SEC gets you a 3 seed in the regional and a regional at the worst. I mean, the SEC is loaded from top to bottom year in and year out in baseball, best college baseball conference. But you have some incredible talent on this team, namely Justin LeBron, preseason All-American. Some outlets have him as first team, some outlets have him as second team.
One of the biggest stars in college baseball.
But one of the biggest stars in college baseball, Golden Spikes Award watch list, which is basically college baseball's Heisman. And he could potentially be, depending how the season goes, be the 1-1 in the MLB draft come this summer. But I mean, even outside of him on the pitching staff, you have Tyler Fay, Zane Adams, both returning starters from last year for the Crimson Tide. Matthew Heiberger and Caden Humphrey, relief pitchers. Matthew Heiberger was potentially going to be that Sunday guy for the Alabama, the last spot on the weekend rotation. He will most likely remain in the bullpen, and Caden Humphrey will likely take over the closer role in high leverage situations for the Crimson Tide. And then back on offense, Bryce Fowler is the only outfielder returning from last year. He's taking over center after playing right last year. Catcher Will Platner just was voted the captain by the team this year and is expected to start and catch today. And then you also have Peyton Steele, freshman last year, showed a lot of potential and limited playing time, but has really come along in fall and spring camp. And he will likely start in right after an injury to Sam Christensen, the Oklahoma transfer. He broke his leg during spring training, and he'll be out a few weeks in the SEC play. But that's allowing Peyton Steele, very talented sophomore, to start in that spot. And then you also have Jason Torres, Justin Osterhaus, who is a transfer from Purdue Fort Wayne, Brendan Holt from University of South Alabama, Logan Davenport, who is currently injured also, but he will be active somewhat soon. And then Johnny Lems, an Australian catcher who will probably split time with Will Platner. And then some freshmen to watch: Eric Hines, a local kid from ACA. Just they from what I know, they love what he has done.
He seems
early.
So talented.
He's so talented. He's a big dude, just an incredible amount of pop, so much power. He'll probably see some time either in left or DHing this year. And then really the guy the freshman I'm excited about is Miles Upchurch, Maryland native, selected to start on Sunday this weekend, and just fastball touches 96, a wipeout slider, and just he could be maybe a big piece, potentially very underrated Alabama pitching rotation. And Ben, I know you're not the most well versed on the Alabama baseball, but just what do you look for them this season? Trying to get back to Omaha after this is the 27th year that they haven't been.
I think what stands out for me about Alabama, maybe not stands out, but an opportunity for this team is why can't they take some games from some of these really good teams? There's no reason they can't. There's a lot of consistency around the lineup, some talented young players, some returning stars, especially one, top end star. So there's absolutely the recipe there to win some games against these good teams. They're going to get the chance to. So all they have to do is take some games and get themselves back into the playoffs and hopefully make some magic happen.
And I mean, a 15-15 record in SEC play gets you potentially a regional host. They got a win away. Either they came very close to winning the series at Florida or at Vanderbilt last year, and arguably they should have won both. That would have granted them a regional host. And I mean, they came extremely close without doing it. They stole it. There's several series where they stole one from one of the top teams in the league. And you were like, okay, if you just won one of these other games, you would be hosting.
Right.
And I mean, they knocked off Georgia when they're the number one team in the country. It was a weird weekend, a lot of rain, but still, I mean, they bested one of the best teams in the country. And they showed last year that they were able to beat these top end teams in the SEC, which means that the top end teams in the country.
They can't do it again.
And no reason they can't do it again. And Rob Vaughn has said that the head coach for the Crimson Tide has said, dating back to his time at Maryland as a head coach, and then here, that this is the most talent that they have had, that he has had personally at his disposal. And where, I mean, last year he said that, I think he said yesterday in a media availability that last year they really had the same 10 dudes that they were trotting out, week day in and day out, with maybe little changes here and there. This year, he said, and he thinks that they have 15 to 16 dudes that can go out there and start for the Crimson Tide. And I just think, a very talented team, very underrated team that maybe people are overlooking at the.
And all they got to do is
in the
put it together,
SEC.
right? Like we were talking about all these different pieces they have. If they can put that together, build the puzzle they need, they can definitely win some games.
And the Crimson side, Tyler Fay, right-hand pitcher from Nebraska, redshirt junior, will throw the first pitch this afternoon at 4:00 against Washington State. And this has been episode 8 of Sports Space. Thank you so much for watching or listening today. We have an incredible joy putting these together.
Absolutely.
And we will be back in 2 weeks for more sports.
Excited to see y'all then.